when Superman made his debut in Action Comics #1, it was known as the definitive introduction of the superhero character onto the world. In this comic book strip, it was done with an anthology style comic book, so his story only lasts about 13 pages. Then there's like 64 other pages of like other random comic book strips, but I don't have that they didn't print that in the reproduction of the 50th anniversary that they did in 1988. You could get that copy for pretty cheap. That's how I read this story. There was only 200,000 copies made and they all sold out. And the story goes that there's only about 50 to 100 remaining to this day. It's known as the most valuable comic of all time, sold for over $2 million in 2011. The cover's iconic. You get to see that image. Alright, but let's get on to the story now, then I could give my grading and go over the plot lines. They really sum up the origins in like one comic book panel. This is actually it exactly. As you can see, all it says is, as a distant planet was destroyed by old age, a scientist placed his infant son within a hastily devised spacecraft, launching it towards Earth. And then, next thing you know, he's already picked up by the Kents and already showing superhuman strength. So they sum it up within one page. And then you can see this is just like a really early rough sketch of the Superman character. They said they were even rushed and they just did they just put the biggest cover as the feature character on it, or the most action-packed cover that they thought they would sell the most. And then it became a hit. And apparently DC Comics, which wasn't even called DC Comics back then, didn't even catch on to why it sold out, or Superman being the reason of why it sold out. Then obviously they eventually did. But really, then he's already an adult and then already working. It already sets the guidelines and the characteristics for the Clark Kent character. And basically he's just disposing of the trash around the town, and like, so he's a news reporter, so that gives him script convenience to like get the inside information on all the corruption and whatnot that's going all down. So he puts an end to it in his own way with a secret identity. We get a Lois Lane introduction in this, and of course he can't get her. He portrays himself as a weakling as Clark Kent, just like as the Superman that we know. And Lois has no interest in him, of course. And basically Lois gets kidnapped and he has to play the weakling role, but he ends up stopping the car. Lois Lane was actually in the car, if I'm not mistaken, when he shakes the goons out of it. It's pretty hilarious. And then it just goes to another random story of him like stopping like political corruption, and he's like jumping around Washington DC with this guy, like jumping on buildings. And the artwork is so sloppy around the edges. They didn't have much to go off of in that day in the comic book strips, and they were drawing these on really cheap ass paper, and like a lot of the comic book strips were done in really small sections and it wasn't that detailed, and not all the talented artists of the years were around at that time for other examples to go off of. So as you can see, it's really sloppy, especially when they try to show things in the background. The attention to detail really isn't there. So we don't get the full origin of Superman, the Jor-El storyline. We never really got it in the movies. We didn't even get into the comic books until like 10 years later or so. I still haven't even read that issue. But with Man of Steel coming out, the Zack Snyder film, the action looks phenomenal. I don't know if it's going to be a boring Nolan and Goyer script, but we'll see. The Jor-El and extended origins of his home planet of Krypton blowing up should be an awesome storyline. I cannot wait to see that being told. That's what I'm definitely looking forward to for the most part. Overall, I give it a B-. Not the most amazing thing, but for its significance, it gets that. But it was still solid for being one of the first superhero comic strips ever made. This was JBM from VillainRadio. You could even search Detective Comics, Batman's first appearance, where I reviewed that. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Click on the channel for more horror, sci-fi, and comic book videos.